Hello, my name is Lucianne McEvoy and I'm an actor.
Hi, Lucianne. I have to give a disclaimer here. I know Lucianne for many, many years, and we'll get to that in a while. Lucianne, take me back. Was acting in your family? Was it what you wanted to do? Like as a young age, was it kind of going, I want to be on stage?
It wasn't in my family at all, although mum and dad have fine voices and they do like sing-alongs at family gatherings and that. I didn't know anyone who was an actor at all. So growing up, it wasn't in my world, and I never really thought of it as an option. I do remember, I'd watch films and plays with a particular like hunger or jealousy, like Annie. I wanted to be Annie so much. It was the hair. She was a ginger. I knew she would understand my pain, and I would, I'd go out in the back garden. I'd sing the songs to myself. But I think in a way that most kids do, play that kind of pretend game of escapism and make believe. I was always writing stories and interested in. I was very good. Like I was a liar. I'd make stuff up. I'd just blag total fictions to my mom and dad, and like I tried to convince my best pal who lived next door, Rachel. I think I tried to convince her for about 2 weeks that I could speak a different language. I would lie extensively, and go into these make-believe worlds, and had her demented until her brother was like, "It's rubbish, she's bullshitting you," and I was like, I just, in characters, I would really enjoy inventing. But it wasn't really until I was, a teenager, until I met you, that I thought, oh, this is something I can enjoy outside of school. And then it took another couple of years for it to be something that I considered something I could do with my life.
And how did you, I'll just explain, not randomly meeting you on the street and you becoming an actress, but I was involved in a dry rain youth theatre in Bray. It was around the early 90s, or early to mid 90s. And it was an amazing time, lots of amazing people, and still people, a huge amount of people in the industry kind of still came from that era. But I suppose I'd be interested how, like, this young girl who kind of was interested but didn't know she was interested found her way into a youth theatre.
Randomly, meeting a pal who was going to the Saturday classes, went to meet her. She was like, "Oh, there's a building on Dargle Road, and meet me there, and then we'll go for coffee." And it was sort of like I was just allowed to get the bus to Bray, and that's what I had to do from Loughlinstown, where I lived. I was probably about 15, and got the bus down to Bray, met Anne, and I was a wee bit early, and so I kind of watched her do a little bit of the workshop in this dark room with people wearing like patchwork dungarees and weird colored hair and like these creatures I didn't have in my very boring all-girl convent school that I was going to at the time. Extraordinary creatures. So I sort of sat in the dark and watched everyone and waited for my friend, and was invited into the circle to join in the last game. And I was like, absolutely not on for that at all. But I was kind of intrigued, something there. And Anne, my pal, who was a great advocate for dry rain, she was always talking about it, and she was in school with me and talking about the boys that she'd meet and all the different pals. And so I kind of regularly started to meet her after, and then I just sort of fell into like, okay, well, maybe if I just pay for this week, I might be able to join in, and sort of held her hand closely, and then just fell in love with all of it and everyone in it. And suddenly I think that summer came, and I was going every Saturday, and it was the thing that I looked forward to throughout the week. And it became, I suppose, for me in my family, it became my thing. It was like, oh, there's Lucianne going to her drama class, and she's enjoying that now. And it was kind of the private life of that I really loved as well.
And did it kind of, when you say your schoolmate was it in your school at all? Was kind of drama or theatre in school?
Not really. There was like, I remember, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and like musicals and things, but I wasn't, I can sing a little bit, but I wasn't the best singer. So I was like in the chorus, and that was all fun, but it was just the life and fun and playfulness that was in Dry Rain was not in school drama.
Yeah.
That was more about putting a face on for the parents, and fronting up, and it's great. I think any kind of drama in schools is absolutely brilliant, But, you know, I kind of enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sports or anything else. It was the people that I met at Dry Rain, I think, in the youth theatre, that made me feel like I'd found my tribe. You know, the thing that everyone says, go, oh, you're an alien like me. Okay, great. This is where I fit in. And that was just glorious.
Was sport a big thing for you?
Not really, no. I mean, I'm sporty enough, like, you know, played hockey and yeah, netball, all those things. But, you know, my sister, I'm of 3 girls, and my older sister was just, and still is, brilliant at sports. So that was her thing. She was a gymnast. She was head of the, you know, captain of the hockey team, all of those things. My younger sister, you know, she had her total other personality, and I kind of felt like I found who I was when I started going to youth theatre.
And did you acquire patchy trousers? And
I totally did have patchy trousers. I have this really clear memory when I talk about the dungarees and the patchy dungarees, because I had a pair of them. And when you directed Romeo and Juliet, and you cast me as Mercutio, I remember rehearsing the Queen Mab speech, and they were like raggedy old things, and the raggedier the better thing. And I had one part of them was held together by a safety pin. And in the middle of, I think you just asked us to be off book, and it was probably the first run through, going through the Queen Mab speech, the fucking safety pin broke. And I had to kind of scramble to get the safety pin and not, you know, break up the speech. So continued with the speech and did this. I thought, Mark's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. And embarrassed, I wasn't wearing the right clothes for the rehearsal, and fixed it and finished the speech. And you said, that's the focus. That's the focus we need. You see, she didn't stop. And you know, those moments when a director or a teacher praise you. And I think as a teacher, that, and as a director, that's really stuck with me. Those moments when you affirm young people are much, much more, they stick in a different way than when you criticize or you note. But actually just saying a good thing, I literally, like, that memory, I play that in my head. Mark said I could focus.
I kept my dungarees on.
Come on, I didn't completely embarrass myself. I got to the end of the speech.
But there was an interesting time in Dry Rain, in that amazing little space down on the Derby Road around, because you had just done Playboy the Western World before that, hadn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember, because I remember there was so many young people involved. That was a summer where the thing was exploded. There was kind of like 30 members to nearly 80 members. And I was really trying to find a way of being as inclusive as possible. So I had this really, really long audition process for Romeo and Juliet, which for me was a gift to be able to direct that with young people. But I just remember I suppose for me, coming straight from college, it was a real sense of buzz down in the building, and driven by you guys, which was incredible to be.
And had you just come straight from UCD?
I left. Well, sorry. I left UCD in late '93, early '94. So yeah, give her. You
were about 25 directing that.
Yeah, so it was a year after I had made the decision. A lot of my pals had gone on and started to do fly by night with kind of Conor McPherson's work in town and stuff like that. So I kind of I'd fallen into Dry Rain and went, okay, there's something here, and and I think
you were acting then as well, weren't you? Because I think one of the first things that I did see was you play Hamlet.
That's right. God. Yeah.
Which again, I've got really clear memories of. It was a beautiful production.
I had costume issues there. I was wearing these, got to think of it, these leather trousers, and the zip was gone in them, so I had to wear safety pins. And in one of the let's say more emotional scenes, I think it was with Claudius, I was down on my knees and they went, but unfortunately they went inwards, which was not a really that gave me a lot of focus for the rest of that play.
When you're missing something in a rehearsal, you just cover your clothes in safety pins to increase the jeopardy level, so that you're really giving it something. That I think that's going to start to be integrated into drama schools, I think.
Lucianne, kind of beyond the patchy dungarees, and just some interest in that kind of tribe thing, what you found there that kind of fed your career later on.
Yes, I suppose it kind of hit at the time, the leaving cert, when, you know, when you're making those decisions about your life and what you're going to do and what you're going to apply for. So round about the time I was really invested in Dry Rain, it was becoming a distraction from, like, you know, studying for exams, and I was really ambitious in terms of the points I wanted to get. I'd always really wanted to study medicine. Part of me that's like, I'd still love to be a doctor. You know, it was a real, that was my dream. If I had an ambition or a dream, that's what it was, until I started to become very distracted by Dry Rain. And then it was an English teacher, really supportive, wonderful, like these angels that come into your life, and I count you as one of them. This English teacher, Dennis Craven, came down to see, I think it was Romeo and Juliet, and I think he'd seen Playboy the Western World, and I had a really nice relationship with him because I loved writing essays and stuff. And he was one of those teachers that would, like, make you get up and read your essay out in front of the class. And he said, look, you know, I think you could train. And I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know that you could go to college to be an actor. To me, that sounded like a ridiculous thing. Like, what? Trinity have a court? Like, what do you do? Like, play with plasticine all day? Like, what? 3 years? I hadn't even heard of it. You know, beyond watching Fame on the TV, I didn't know what that would be. And so I kind of dismissed that, and hadn't even broached it with my parents or anything as a serious option. But Dennis applied for drama school for me. He got the application form and he phoned me and he was like, right, I'm filling this out, and you had to go and see a play and review a play as part of the application. He went to the gate, saw a play, and then dictated my review, and it completely kind of nudged and pushed me in there. And I suppose I was just, on a kind of personal level, I was kind of losing a bit of my focus, because at that time my parents were splitting up and there was lots of stuff going on at home. So I kind of needed that. I did need that kind of guidance from older adults who were able to go, I think you just need a little bit of nudging here and there, because I didn't really know where I was going. Got my audition day for drama school, was told you've got to learn 2 speeches, and I came to you, and we decided I'd do the Queen Mab speech from Romeo and Juliet, which obviously you'd worked with me on, and then you pointed me in the direction of Bloody Poetry by Howard Brenton, and again you helped me prepare that. And I was very lucky. I hadn't applied for any other drama school. I didn't get in first round, but a couple of weeks after, I thought, oh, I haven't heard, so I've not got in. I got a phone call to say someone didn't accept their place. Will you come in for a further interview? And you're sort of on the waiting list, kind of thing. And then I started to get a bit more focused about it and think, I loved the audition day. I loved the workshop. I loved the kind of feel of the place. And I thought, maybe this is what I want, actually. I should have tried a bit harder. I should have wanted this more. So by the time I came in for the sort of final interview, they were very upfront with me, and they were like, look, you didn't take the criticism well, you were a bit defensive, and you're going to need to toughen up. And I think, because I interview young people and middle-aged people for drama school now, and I'm on the other side of that table, and I wasn't ready. I was young. I just 18. I just turned 18. And I wasn't quite ready, or at least their worry was that I wasn't ready for the rigor of what that 3 years would be. But they were very frank with me about that. And I think what I said was, well, if you don't think I'm ready, then I don't want to do it. So I leave it up to you, as if it wasn't up to them in the first place. But I did, I got a place on that course. And, I think it was probably only, again, halfway through the first term that I felt really certain that I was in the right place, and that I kind of thanked my lucky stars and you and Dennis and people who were able to kind of point me and focus me towards that place. Because I think it's hard for you to know what drama school, it's hard for anyone to know what drama school is until they've taught on it or they've been through it. But it was the best thing for me, I just loved it.
And Lucy, just to take it back a tiny bit, what's interesting there is you've gone through, the experience of youth theatre, which so many people in the industry talk about as, It's like you always hear youth theatre, you hear drama society in college, and you hear drama school, or one or two of those things. But I suppose knowing you and remembering you back then, I think there's one thing that you kind of forget to talk about when you talk about how you progressed. You were always very, very focused and driven. Do you know what I mean? Even working with you back when you were whatever 15.
Mm.
Funny, I didn't realize that was the summer before your leaving starts. That like cast you in Romeo and Juliet, but that has really that shone out of you. And I'm wondering, like, was that something you were aware of back then? That you kind of went, oh, okay, this I'm getting this.
I don't know. I suppose it's when people say, you're good at that. When I've got two little girls, and when I say that's a great painting, look, that's not just like as you would with kids. Actually, my Grace she's a really great artist, and you take the time to encourage a young person, I think that feeds them and they get hungrier for that. So I think for me, the positive attention I was getting as a young actor in Dry Rain, and from the directors and from my peers, made me want to be even better. I loved it. I enjoyed being told I was good at something. And I loved the work. I mean, I have another really clear memory, and this is a touchstone for me in terms of the work I do as a teacher and still as an actor. There was a little like fire escape outside area of the performance space. And because it was the summer and we were rehearsing Romeo and Juliet, you brought us all outside to that little sun trap that the fire escape led onto. And I have a really clear memory of us all sitting around on plastic chairs outside. And I think it's where the bins were kept. I mean, it wasn't beautiful, but the sun was shining and we were breaking down the text. We were going through the Shakespeare, which for most of us, we'd done very little of, or we'd done it badly in school. And it was kind of it was a scary thing. It was a hurdle, I think, for you to allow us to fall in love with that language. But the way that you did that and how you inspired us to kind of crack open those images and those words, that blew my mind completely and started for me a love of language that didn't really happen in school so much. I think I was always imaginative and writing stories in school, but the appreciation, the love of words and the text started with Dry Rain. And I genuinely, I loved it. It was a drug, and I was going, I want more of that. I want more and more of that.
And then after a year or so in college, you kind of went, oh, okay, this is like moving.
Yeah.
That is a kind of a tribal love thing to something that could be something that you do for your life.
Yes. And I think there, like in college, I wasn't getting the kind of the tribal, the friends. It wasn't a social thing. I was leaning much more into the work and the craft and the challenge and enjoying all the challenges that were being thrown at us there. And it was really intensive, 3-hour movement classes and 2-hour poetry and prose classes. And we had a huge workload, but I just loved it. I loved the complete focus and the kind of immersive nature of that. It allowed me to escape from a lot of things that I wanted to escape from at the time as well. So, but it was like a healthy, for me, escape. And we'd small class sizes. We'd sort of like 12 of us started and 9 graduated that first 3-year course at the Samuel Beckett Centre. And so they were really watchful and really mindful, because it was the first year. We got loads of attention. Nothing was complacent about the teaching. Everything was very deliberate, and all of our kind of feedback was really listened to. And so it felt like a very kind of collaborative course, but challenging as well. And Pete McAllister, who ran that course, is now at Central in London. And he's one of those people you kind of go, there was Mark and there's Dennis and there was Pete McAllister and there's Andrea Ainsworth and there's these people who you want to be that to younger people now as a proper grown-up, who were able to mold and shape who you become as an artist. And Pete was very quite, never really warmed to him as he wasn't the friendliest person. It's like kind of always reminded me of Mr. Burns, and all the Samuel Beckett Centre people will kind of maybe giggle with that. But he he was he is an incredible teacher in that he's able to see into you and into your soul and see what you need before you need it. And he was a real guide in that way. And I feel very lucky to have been taught by him. And I know that lots of other people who come from the Samuel Beckett Centre have a similar, you say Pete McAllister, and suddenly, your hairs just stand up a little bit on your skin. We all have those teachers who we respect in that way. And sometimes, like if in a long run of a show years later, Wednesday matinee in Plymouth, and you're like, okay, no, come on, people are putting on their best clothes, and I've got to really make an effort here. It's like they've never seen the show. I would just think that Pete McAllister's in the audience. It's a really good little kind of like, okay, now I'm in it.
And I suppose then, like, that transition piece for any young actress or actor of any age, kind of leaving the hotbed of teaching and learning and excavation of drama school and heading into the industry. And it's kind of a really interesting journey for you that kind of went, popped very, very quickly.
Yeah, it did. I kind of left drama school straight into the Abbey. Lovely part in a lovely new Frank McGuinness play, Dolly West Kitchen, and the part was for someone who could believably be Northern Irish, and my family are Northern Irish, so I was able to get away with the accent, I think, and young, and I sort of just 2021 leaving drama school, so I could sort of believably be 17, and the part of this maid, Anna Owens, was a great part. It was, I think there were 6 or 7 of us in that play. Everyone had their own story. Catherine Byrne, Donna Dent, Simon Gorman, Pauline Flanagan's, a couple of incredible American actors in there as well, and Michael Colgan, and everyone had their little story. But as a young actor, it wasn't just a bit part playing the maid. It was a great part and a really lovely platform for me to kind of come out of drama school straight onto the main stage and in the Abbey. And then we went to the Old Vic for a few months with it, so I got a taste of London. So a lot of that kind of like, the cliff that my classmates were feeling when they came out of drama school and suddenly they're scrapping around for work in the dark. I had this glorious start, but then that finished, and then I came home and was scrapping around in the dark, and it was like, who are you? Where did you go? Yeah, I graduated a year ago, and you're not so interesting anymore. So I did have that period of, the first time I think you finish drama school and you come out and you don't work, you think that, but I'm supposed to be an actor and I'm an agent now, and so you have that. I really remember that idea of having to get used to the fact that it's not just on your doorstep. It doesn't just happen. You have to figure out how to be okay with being an actor and being an artist, but not being in a rehearsal room. And that stuff, I think, wasn't taught as well in drama school for me as everything else. I think I had to, I'm still learning that. But I think maybe drama school, generally my knowledge of schools I've taught in, are a bit better at that kind of career preparation. Giving young people a kind of a realistic outlook on what it's going to be like, but also encouraging them to make their own work, to write and to devise and to get together with other actors and make your own stuff. That there wasn't really much of that in my training at Samuel Beckett, and I think I would have appreciated more of it, because
But it's incredible though, having come directly out of drama school into virtually a year run, whatever it is, like a long run of, a new Frank McGuinness show on the main stage of the Abbey, going to the Old Vic, and then landing back. That's hard, kind of landing back into a place. Obviously we're speaking now, and you're in Scotland, but like a space you kind of in a way had already left, because you'd kind of gone into the National Theatre and kind of, to London already before you'd even got started.
Yeah, it definitely was hard. And I remember time thinking, this is never going to end, and oh God, I've made a horrible mistake, and is it too late? Can I go back to college? And then another job came along, just at the point I think, oh, I'm going to lose, but an audition, okay. And another job came along, and I think that was think it was translations at the Abbey, and we did a lovely tour. I mean, it was still one of the best jobs I've ever had. I mean, I think I had my best years the first couple of years out of drama school. We did this version of translations where we did like 5 European countries in 5 weeks.
Wow.
Ben Barnes directed it, and it was just before he left. I think it bankrupt the Abbey. I mean, it was incredible. We had the best time, and I still am in touch with a few of the actors, Brian Doherty and Morna Regan. Sometimes we kind of text each other and get in touch and think like, that job was great. You know, it was a lovely way to see different countries, to be kind of welcomed in as the National Theatre. I mean, there are things about this job that are glorious, and you know, when it's good, there's nothing better. So you kind of have to go, well, I have to be okay then with, or at least this is the way I feel about it, you have to be okay with the gamble of, well, there might be nothing tomorrow. And you can't sort of look and be shocked by that continuously. But I mean, there's a trend.
But I mean, also there's, you know, there's a trend you have to take on board as well, that in the first few years of your career, you know, you've worked with Frank McGuinness, Brian Friel, and then, you know, Sebastian Barry subsequently, you know, in the Abbey, and having a very young international focus to your work. You know what I mean? It was kind of, it's interesting now that you kind of, you know, have ended up spending a lot of your career in London and Scotland as well.
Yeah. I think doing that play with Frank, that being the kind of the first job, and then after translations, doing Hinterland with Sebastian Barry, doing new plays, I think really gave me an appreciation of new writing and writers, and what your role is in that rehearsal room as an actor when that script is still being tested and formed. And still today, that's the thing that I love most, is working on new work and being that tool for the writer and the director, that kind of that backboard when they throw things at you and you throw it back, and they know you and maybe trust you well enough to know that maybe there's another way of playing it, but maybe it's just a tweak with the line, and then you throw it back again and they hear it. Yes, that's right. I mean, I love that job that we have as actors, and I think it's something that's maybe not appreciated enough in terms of actors' roles as creative artists as well as interpretive artists, that we, in the kind of, if you're lucky enough to have a development week or a couple of development weeks on new pieces, that you add a lot. I think good, you know, certain actors who have an ear for writing and appreciation for words, I think you know, from knowing enough writer friends now, they really appreciate actors and their input in that stage. And it's something that I love and really enjoy. And I think those first jobs, being kind of mostly new writing, started that love of and appreciation of writers.
Well, it must be incredible to be out of college and sort of, you know, working on a new play by Frank McGuinness. I mean, that kind of...
Extraordinary. Yeah. And he'd be scribbling stuff down on like scraps of paper and throwing them to you. And I remember, and like Frank, and I'm still in touch with Frank, and so I know he'll have his sense of humor about this, but Michael Colgan, not of the Gate, Michael Colgan, the actor who's now a writer, very well-established writer and a lecturer, and still an actor. He's out in Belfast, I think. Michael was about 26 when we did the show, and he still is and was then a really sharply intelligent young man then. And I think he'd been a history student and then went on to train as an actor. And he sort of said, Frank, I think you'll find in 1939, where the play was set, sort of around that time, this or that hadn't happened yet. And Frank was, the fuck, you bastard, and threw something at him, you know. But he found it, you know, a big kind of glitch in the timeline of the play, which Frank greatly appreciated, I'm sure, but was really first like, oh God, I've got to try and fix this hole. But I think that interrogation that actors bring to a script is it's really important, that is rigorous. I always think of it like, you know, if you go into like a simulation, like a computer game, not that I've done this, but this is how I always kind of visualize what actors do when they go into a new script. It's like you put on the goggles and you're in that virtual reality. And only when you put yourself as an actor in that role that's been written for you, can you start to really see the things that don't make sense, or that need to be followed through more, or that need to be provoked in a different way in order to give you the reason to do X, Y, and Z. I think writers are incredible, and I'm not a writer, but I have a huge kind of respect and a crush on every writer I work with. But I think when actors can go into what writers oversee and really kind of interrogate that, and then come out and go, I need more of a reason to do this, or I don't get X, Y, and Z. I love that. I love that kind of, diving and interrogating a script in that way. And in some ways, like, I think I love that more than performance sometimes, because it's a different kind of buzz.
And then New Adventures, London.
Yeah.
Kind of, I think that sense of testing yourself in a whole new kind of context. What did that feel like?
Yeah, it's just exciting to be a young person in your 20s in London. Incredible, like diverse, colourful, like a million cities all mushed into one. I loved it, and I got to do lots of really great work there and meet lots of brilliant people that I'm still in touch with and still work with. I was doing quite a lot of my work outside of London as well, and then quite a lot, which kind of links with where I am now, in Scotland, working with Theatre Babel, working at the Lyceum. And so when I kind of did my 20s in London, and my husband is an actor and a director and a teacher as well, so we were both kind of like artists in London. How I'm going to have children, how does this work? And neither of us sort of really ever did a lot of work that made a lot of money, commercial TV stuff. So with being theatre artists, we had to kind of think carefully about where we could afford to live long term and continue to be artists, or we could stop and just get proper jobs and stay in London. But London for me, I'd never loved it specifically. I'm not a big city person. It was because of the line to work that I kind of went there, rather than because I loved the big city. So it wasn't difficult for us to consider leaving. And then the options were Dublin or Bolton, where my husband's from. And as much as I love Manchester, I didn't fancy living in Bolton. And because we had both worked and were working a lot in Scotland, and we met working in Scotland, we thought, well, that might be the fair middle ground between an Irish woman and an Englishman. Scotland sort of sits kind of comfortably, and we sort of came up thinking, should we give it a go? And we've been here for about 8 years now.
Wow. And so you were kind of doing work in Scotland from London? Is it kind of
kind of working.
Coincidentally happened for you?
Sorry, say that again.
Or did it coincidentally happen that just started to happen?
Well, I just auditioned for a job for Theatre Babel when I was about 25, and my husband met Pete at that audition, and worked with them did a kind of a festival show that ended up touring, and then worked as Graham McLaren directed that play, then worked with Graham subsequently in the Lyceum. So kind of throughout my kind of 25 to 28, did quite a lot of work in Scotland, and was going up and down to London, still based in London. And then because Pete and I had worked in Scotland, we got together. He was from London, or he was based in London as well. We were always very romantic about it, I suppose, because it's where we met and it's where we'd worked, and a lot of our pals were still there. And Scotland to me feels more like Ireland. It feels very familiar. It feels very like Northern Ireland, and I didn't really want to live in England, and I still would love to live in Ireland, but it didn't feel like for us it would be I don't think Pete would have had a lot of opportunities as an English actor, and it would have been really hard, I think, for us to hit the ground running from nothing, in Ireland. So we were kind of just following each little thread, and it was a thread of work that brought us to Scotland. I was working with Graham, and Grace, my eldest daughter, was about 5 months old. So I felt safe dipping my toe back into work with the 5-month-old, with someone who I'd worked with a lot before. And I love and trust Graham. And he was like, it's a little thing, it's a monologue, and you know, you can take breaks. And I was like, oh, okay. And Pete was doing some teaching. And really, since those jobs, we got subsequent work, and we're very lucky, and things have just kept going. And it made sense then to just go, let's just be here.
I mean, more than keep going for yourself. I mean, the last 5, 6, 7 years, you've done some extraordinary work. I mean, 2 recently, you know, brand new plays in the Traverse, which we will come to in a minute. But like, you know, I saw you, God, it must be 4 or 5 years ago now, in the Curious Incident, when I was touring, and that's such a huge show. I mean, and you went into that when it was up and running, did you?
So Curious had been in the West End for, God, maybe 6, 7 years. Oh God, I think, anyway, a substantial amount of time. And it was still running in the West End. So I did the National Theatre Productions tour, the UK and Ireland tour. And I think that was the second UK and Ireland tour. So there've been like loads of casts of that show. And there's a curious family of people that often, now I might get a call and say, the Siobhan who's in has just twisted her ankle, can you fly in? But for me, that job was great because it was a really big scale. It was working for the National again. It was a lot of touring. I'd been up for the West End production, and I'd come very close to getting that. And the whole time through that, I mean, there were like 7 auditions, and I kept going down from Scotland, and Pete and I kept looking at each other going, they want to see me again. We would have all had to have moved to London for me to do that job. And I remember being on the cut just down by the Old Vic, and it was where the final audition was. And I phoned a school near where my pal lived, rather, in London, because my eldest was just about to start school. And if I got the job, we'd have to have moved, and I had to put her in a school.
Yeah.
And I spoke to like literally 10 minutes before going into the audition, I was speaking to a school going, how easy would it be? Do you have any places available for a, that's where my focus was how do we make this work? And anyway, I didn't get that. But when the tour came up, they just offered me that part in the tour. And actually, weirdly, it was a much easier thing for us to manage because I had these clear weekends, and it meant the kids could come and see me, and it wasn't a huge disruption. They could stay in the school and the drama class, the swimming on Thursday, and all that stuff didn't need to change. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you have kids, in the kind of timeline of talking about your career and your work, it's all very clear, and then it becomes very complicated and messy, and all the things that you've got to consider. But for me, as an actor, that was an important job because that meant I was practicing my craft at the top of the game, and the pressure was on again. There was, we were doing frantic assembly workouts, keeping really fit all the way through that.
Yeah.
With those kind of the nuts and bolts of that show were kept very tight, and it was a wonderful experience to do it. And I think it gave me a confidence then to come back to Scotland and go into the work I came into after that with a different kind of perspective. I think it's always tricky to get comfortable anywhere you are as an actor. For me, I think I always want to go, oh, this feels like going to work. This feels like, just jobbing day to day. And I don't want to be that. I want to always, I think, feel like I'm hustling for it a bit, feel like I'm challenging myself and bringing something back all the time, bringing something new into a rehearsal room rather than bringing something that's reliable. People go, oh, yeah.
I think just what you said there, I think is really interesting. I think part of the drive for these interviews where, for people outside the industry to have a look at kind of the normality of life of actors we might see in our stages, or writers, or whatever it is. But that moment of, being on the phone to a school before you go into the West End audition is the normality of someone's life who's a recent mother, or has young kids.
Yeah. I suppose for me, though, it's the priority.
Yeah.
It's really clear. The priority is your family. and making sure that everyone is kept safe and well and fed and all of those things. And I think it's much easier, or it's very different to be an actor, and not necessarily much easier at all, actually. I completely take that back. But it's very different to be an actor when the decisions that you're making are just about you.
Yeah.
There's a total different weight of responsibility when the decisions you're making and the jobs you're going up for and saying that you would be up for are going to affect everyone that, you know, in your immediate family. But, you know, to kind of full circle on that, I was not as good an actor at all before I had kids. It was too important to me. It was too big. It was, and when we started to have kids, and having a family wasn't a straightforward thing for us. It was something we had difficulty starting our family. That when we did have the girls, and we do have them now, it's like, oh God, acting, like, yeah, it's great, but like, it's just a job. You know, it's a great job and it's an important job, but it wasn't that. It had too much of a weight for me,
Yeah.
you know, and the perspective that I've been able to get now, I really appreciate. Because if she'd said, no, your kids can't, I'd be like, thanks, give the job to someone else. It's fine. I'm good with it. You know, it's like.
And I think that's interesting, because less that it's kind of less of a focus, but I think from what you speaking to you before and speaking to you now, I think it's kind of it more focused. I mean, like, for example, the Curious Incident, that show was so full of effects and screens, but actually it wasn't. If you stripped all that back, you know, there was a hugely tight ensemble piece there. And similarly with with Ulster American and, you know, subsequent play, their ensemble build plays, and the nuts and bolts of that are kind of hugely important, and new work again.
And again, it's the words. You know, it's Mark Haddon's novel, it's Simon Stevens' adaptation of that play, it's the story of Christopher. With Ulster American, it's that, you know, the craft, the wordsmith that David Ireland is, to be able to turn all those words into different kinds of weapons is what holds that play together. You know, it's got to look nice, and, you know, you've got to hear the actors, got to be clear, but if the words aren't carrying that story, it all falls apart.
Yeah.
And similarly with Crocodile Fever, the last show that I did for the Traverse, and it was a co-production between the Lyric in Belfast and the Traverse. Young writer Megan Tyler, who's, you know, an incredibly exciting young writer and actor, and she does it all. And she's a pure example of, you know, make your own work, write your own work, and be in other people's work, and you can and should, you know, expect and want to do all of that. She has a really kind of fresh way with words, where, you know, you read something and you go, oh, this is, and if you sort of say the words out loud, you always know that's a really good sign. If you're compelled to speak the words as you read a script, you're like, oh, I have to hear these words. I want to hear them crash into each other and fight with each other. That's always really exciting. So no matter who you get to play the part, no matter what the budget is for the set and the design and all the special effects and rolling it in glitter, if the substance isn't there, you know, the idea or the story, whether it's a wordy play or not, if that's not there, the rest is, it's just smoke and mirrors, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gas, because I mean, I think it was the last time I saw you on stage was Ulster American, and Jesus, I mean, I saw it in the Traverse.
As well. First, wasn't it? It was the tiny space.
Yeah, and it was gas as an Irishman sitting there among predominantly quite international crowd, obviously for the festival, but the watching the audience in relation to some of the, you know, the more jokes that you'd find funny in Ireland, because we're allowed to laugh at them, were landing in very different ways. But also that weaponization of language is a really, really great phrase. That sense of, because that play, that's what it's about, you know, that. But just that was 3 extraordinary performances, and I suppose the journey to that, Lucianne, must have been incredible to kind of work with that material.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. So David Ireland is he lives in Glasgow, Northern Irish, British, not Irish playwright who lives in Glasgow, And so people had said, oh, you must know David Ireland. You know, you're both Irish. David Ireland, you're Irish. And people, I think I'd obviously said it to him as well, but we'd never met. But I was doing a show at the Sits. I was doing Bowl Girls by Ronan Munro, and Gareth Nichols, who directed the show, came to see that. And I think he was coming to see that now to kind of to take a look at my Northern Irish accent, to kind of have an eye on that. Because Gareth had actually assisted Graham on the very first job I did to Glasgow when I moved up when Grace was like 5 months old. Gareth was assisting. So we'd worked together before, but now he was an associate at the Traverse. And then he contacted me after seeing Bowl Girls. He's like, I've got this script and I think, you know, I really do think you're right for one of the parts, but will you have a read? It's just a draft. And at this stage, the script was in 3 acts and it took place over a number of days. And so it was kind of extraordinary, all the things so the moment that happened at the end of the play was the end of the first act, the end of the play that it kind of went on and on. And Gareth was nervous about it because it was written pre-Me Too. It was written at a time when the play came out, everything was happening. So it was quite prophetic in a sense of David to write it. And Gareth was aware that it was kind of volatile, potentially quite, you know, scandalous, maybe upsetting material for some people, but like it was bubbly stuff. So he was very much like, just certain things won't stay the same. Some of the sexual violence and things were taken out of it. Have a read. And I sat in the Sits because my kids were doing drama classes there at the time, and you could sit and have a cup of tea while you waited for them. And I read it on my phone and I spat my tea out, and all these parents looked up on their laptops and I just couldn't contain the laughter because the characters just jumped out. I think we're so afraid to say so much these days, aren't we? We're afraid of our own thoughts, and we're afraid of how we're going to articulate things because we're very mindful that, and rightly so, that they can be received and perceived in ways that we don't mean.
Yeah.
And I think what David allowed these characters to do were be assholes. All 3 of them are assholes, and they're just bah. And they say all these things that we think we shouldn't, but within the context of that character and where they're coming from, that's not David's voice. And we're not saying it's okay, but these voices do exist, and these conversations and these arguments do happen in rooms with 3 or 4 people. That was kind of gloriously like a relief to just hear these people unmuted go blah. But you're right, because when audience would hear it, they'd laugh and go, or they'd judge someone else for laughing.
Well, there was a couple of times because, you know, I think I'd have a dark enough sense of humor, and I have the same kind of feeling as you, like, you know, sometimes you have to laugh at things, you know, but one of the kind of few of the darker gags, I just burst out laughing. And I looked around and went, there's about 3 other people in the audience, and I bet they're Irish. And they were laughing, and oh, and I could see people looking, the man beside me looking at me, and I'm kind of going, oh, I think it's hilarious, you know. But I think that, again, that makes it live. That makes it for an audience kind of live.
So exciting to perform. And we all felt that. Daryl De Silva, Robbie Jack, with the other 2 actors in it, we every time backstage, and we remounted it again last year. We went to Australia, New Zealand with it, and the joy that we had coming back to it, because none of that excitement left, because it felt much more like going into a boxing ring. It felt much more like, okay, we get our gloves on, and when you go into the ring, you've got a side of people who you can hear them go, whoa, for you, or oh, you know. So we were fighting to, I suppose, get the audience to come with us on our journey, even though, and it was really important to me, and it was something that I feel I'm very glad that I was able to feed into the development of the play, because I was the only woman in the room apart from the assistant director, and all the men in the room were very mindful that they were men in the room. And so my opinion was, I suppose, very much listened to, as you know, as it should be at all times. But when I'd say to David, look, you're giving her the character of Ruth, you're giving her an easy time. You're letting her off here, and you're giving her an excuse for her behavior. You're not doing that for the men. And I think she's ambitious, and I think that she's using this to her advantage, and you don't need to make her a goodie. You know, you don't need to do that. She's allowed to be all the things that they are. And so even though we as the actors and playing the characters were going out trying to bring the audience with us, they were all assholes. All three of them, you know, were very, very faulty, which made it a comedy and not a tragedy because she wasn't a victim. And, you know, we were just allowed to sort of laugh at the ridiculousness of how we treat each other and how we use this kind of shaming, this kind of call out culture sometimes to our advantage rather than for the purpose it should be there for. You know, it just called out so many hypocrisies that I think people were just like, oh, thanks for writing that, David Ireland. Yeah. So yeah, that was a great fun job.
He's an extraordinary writer. I mean, and I think, you know, Lucianne, I won't keep you much longer, but I just want to ask you a final question in relation to, you know, that thread of the inspiration in the work, or that thread of, you know, you speak still like that the dedication to the craft of it is still very, very important. I mean, that's important for all actors, but that kind of sense of it's the word, particularly around your experience of working with a lot of new plays. And is that very important to you?
Completely, it is. And, you know, I think even more so in the world that we are in now. I was lucky enough to be asked to do one of the Abbey Dear Ireland monologues by Carmel Winters, who's written one of them. And so we've had this lovely exchange. And I worked with Carmel before, so we know each other, and that always helps when you're phoning and Skyping. You don't get to be in a room with someone. Carmel wrote the monologue, and then I read the monologue, and then I asked some questions about it, and then I worked on it myself. And she's in Cork and I'm in Glasgow. And I just, as useful as the conversations on the phone have been, and the texts and the little questions, and Carmel's been incredibly supportive and guided me throughout making that little film. I want to be in a room with people again. I want that connection, because I think as great as the writer is and as great as the actor is, it's when they come together with the director and everyone in the room that then something else starts to grow that the writer could never make by themselves, and the actor would never be inspired to perform, because it's something that's more than all of us. And I think, you know, it starts for me with the words in the story, and then the actors interact with that, and the director guides it all. But I love that moment where you read something and the writer's like, oh, I didn't mean that when I wrote it, or I didn't hear that when I wrote it. And then something else comes that is beyond any of us. And that's just about being in a room together. So can we do that soon, please? That would be nice.
Let's leave it at that, with that wish that I hope we all kind of get a chance, and I hope we get a chance to have a cup of tea and have a conversation, you know, in each other's company very, very soon. Lucianne, thanks a million for doing this.
Thanks, Mark. Loads of love. Keep well.
I'll talk to you soon.